8 of the Callan for business, and
Okay.
our last headword was miscellaneous, newer type of
Miscellaneous.
lesson.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
let's start with revision. Okay, let me just
Mm,
scroll down.
okay.
Okay, here we go. First question.
Mm.
When choosing a method of transport for the distribution of its products, what should a business consider? When choosing a method of transport for the distribution of its product, what should a business consider? When choosing a
When
method
choosing
of
a
transport
method of
for the
transport
distribution
for the
of its
distribution
products,
of its
a business
products,
should
a business
consider
should
things
consider things
such as
such
cost,
as cost,
speed, how
speed,
reliable the
how
method of
reliable the
transport
method
is,
of transport
etc.
is, etc.
Very good. What do we mean by a distribution channel? What do we mean by a distribution channel? By a
By a
distribution channel,
distribution
we
channel,
mean
we
the
mean
way the
the
goods
way the
reach the
goods
final
reach the
consumer.
final
For
consumer.
example,
For
from a
example,
factory
from a
to a
factory
wholesaler,
for a
then
wholesaler,
on to a
then on
retailer,
to a
and
retailer,
finally to
and
the
finally
consumer.
to the consumer.
Very good. What do we mean by brainstorming? What do we mean by brainstorming? By
By a
brainstorming, we
brainstorming,
mean a
we mean
situation
a
where a
situation
group of
where
people
a group of
is
people
spontaneously
is
thinking
spontaneous,
of and
spontaneous
suggesting
thinking
ideas
of
and
such
suggesting
and suggesting
ideas,
ideas,
usually to deal with
usually
a
to deal
business
with
issue.
a business issue.
Give me an example. Give me an example, please. We need a
We need
brainstorming
a
session
brainstorming
to get
session
fresh
to get
ideas
fresh
for our
ideas
next
for our
marketing
next
campaign.
marketing campaign.
Very good. Okay. Which areas of a business does an internal audit usually inspect? Which areas of a business does an internal audit usually inspect? An internal audit
An internal
usually
audit
inspects a
usually
business
inspects a
financial
business
accounts
financial
and
account
other records,
and other
but can
records,
also
but
cover
can also cover operational
operational
pre-
procedures,
procedures,
governance,
governance,
internal controls,
internal controls,
etc.
etc.
Who normally performs an internal audit? Who normally performs an internal audit? Accountants or
Accountants
auditors
or
who are
auditors
employed
who
by
are
the
employed
company
by the
normally
company
perform
normally
an internal
perform an
audit.
internal audit.
What does an auditor report usually reveal? What does an auditor's report usually reveal? An auditor's
An
report
auditor
usually
report
reveals
usually
whether
reveals
records
whether the
are
records
adequate
are
and
adequate
correct
and
and
correct
identifies
and
weaknesses
identifies
in the business,
weaknesses in the business,
such as
such
areas
as
where there's
areas
an
where
excessive
there's
risk
an excessive risk
or where
or
opportunities
where
for
opportunities
fraud exist.
for fraud exist.
Very good. External audits are okay. So, what's the main purpose of an external audit? What's the main purpose of an external audit? The main purpose
The main
of an
purpose of
external
an
audit
external
is to
audit
report
is to
on whether
report
a
on
company
whether a
is
company
meeting its
is meeting
statutory
its
financial obligations
statutory financial obligations
and to inform
and to
shareholders
inform
whether the
shareholders
company's
whether the
financial
company's
statements
financial
are
statements
adequate and
are
correct.
adequate and correct.
Right. Are large companies in your country obliged to, by law, to have an external audit of their financial statements carried out each year? Are large companies in your country obliged by law to have an external audit of their financial statements carried out each year? Yes or no?
Yes,
Large
large
companies in my
companies in my
country
country
are obliged
are
by
obliged
law to
by
have
law
an
to have
external
an
audit
external
of
audit
their financial
of their
statements
financial
carried
statement
out each year.
carried out each year.
Very good. Do you think most employees view their annual appraisal as a source of valuable feedback or a waste of everyone's time? Do you think most employees view their annual appraisal as a source of valuable feedback or a waste of everyone's time? I think
I think
most employees
most
view their
employees
annual appraisal
view
view their
their
annual appraisal
annual appraisal
as
as
a valuable
uh,
feedback or
valuable feedback.
very good. Okay. In what circumstances is it probably not appropriate in a meeting to vote by a show of hands? In what circumstances is it probably not appropriate in a meeting to vote by a show of hands? It's probably
It's
not
probably
appropriate, not appropriate
pardon, not
in
appropriate
a meeting to vote.
to,
Okay.
for people.
One more.
Sorry,
It's
yes, yes,
it's
please.
probably
Probably
not appropriate
not
in a meeting
appropriate
to
in a
vote
meeting
by a
to
show
vote
of
by
hands
a show of
in
hands
circumstances
in
where the
circumstances
decision
where
is
the
sensitive,
decision is sensitive,
such as a vote
such
to
as
elect
a vote
someone
to elect
from
someone
among the
from among
participants
the
in the
participants
meeting.
in the meeting.
What would be a better way of voting in such circumstances? What would be a better way of voting in such circumstances? Then, a better way
A
of
better way
voting in
of
such
voting in such
circumstances would be
circumstances
to hold
would
a
be
ballot.
to hold a ballot.
Right? Which adjective describes a vote in which everyone agrees? Which
Yes.
adjective describes a vote in which everybody
Oh,
agrees? The adjective
the adjective
unanimous
unanimous
describes a vote
describes a
in which
vote
everybody
in which
agrees.
everybody agrees.
If there's a lack of consensus among participants and a vote results in a deadlock, who normally has the casting vote? If there's a lack of consensus among participants and a vote results in a deadlock, who normally has the casting vote? If there's a lack
If
of
there's a lack
consensus
of consensus
among participants
among the
and a
participants
vote result
and a vote
in a
result
deadlock,
in a
the
deadlock,
chair normally
the chair
has the
normally
casting
has
vote.
the casting vote.
Very good. Okay, next. Name a well-known company that's gone bust in recent years. Name a well-known company that's gone bust in recent years. The name
The
of a
name
well-known
of a
company
well-known
that's
company
gone bust
that go
in
bust
recent
in
years
recent
is
years is Silicon Valley Bank.
okay. Silicon Valley. That's correct. Very good. Okay. Why do the following what do the following abbreviations mean and how are they used in business correspondence? What do the following abbreviation mean and how are they used in business correspondence? REF
REL
means
means
reference
reference
and is followed
and is
by a
followed
colon
by a
and then
column
some
and
numbers
then some
or
numbers
letters.
or
These
letters.
numbers and
These
letters
numbers and
identify
letters
a particular
identify
document
a particular
or
document
matter that
or
the
matter
writer is
that the
referring
writer
to.
is referring to.
PS
PS
means
means
postscriptum,
postscript,
which is Latin
which is
for
Latin
after writing.
or after writing.
It's an informal
It's an
abbreviation
informal
that can
abbreviation
be placed
that can be
after the
placed
end of a
after the
letter
end of a
when we
letter
want to
when
add
we
more
want to
text.
add more text.
Very good. SAE
SAE
is an abbreviation
is an
that stands
abbreviation
for
that stands
Stamped
for
Addressed
stamped
Envelope
addressed
or
envelope
Self-Addressed
or
Envelope,
self-addressed envelope.
MISC,
MISC
is an abbreviation
is an
of the word
abbreviation of the word
miscellaneous, an
miscellaneous
adjective
and the adjective
describing a group
describing
of different
a
things
group of different
that don't
things
belong
that don't
to any
belong
particular
to any
category.
particular category.
Very good. Okay, so that's the end of our revision. Very good, very fast. Let's have numeric. Okay, repeat. Equity.
Equity.
Very good, Kilson. Equity. When a business borrows money from a bank, the bank doesn't have equity in the business, but it does become a creditor. When we talk about our equity in a property or a business, we mean the value of what we own minus the related liabilities. For example, if we own a house worth £400,000 and our mortgage is only £100,000, then we have £300,000 of equity in the property. It
Equity.
means the total price minus the
Ah.
liability. Okay, let's practice. If your mortgage on a property was £150,000, but the property itself is worth £750,000, how much equity would you have? If your mortgage on a property is £150,000, but the property itself was worth £750,000, how much equity would you have? If my
If
mortgage
I
on a property
mortgage on the property
was
was
£150,000,
150,000
but
pounds,
the property
but the
itself
property
was
itself
worth
was worth
£750,000,
750,000
my
pounds,
equity would
my
be
equity would be
£600,000.
600,000 pounds.
Right. When a business borrows money from a bank, does the bank then have equity in the business? When a business borrows money from a bank, does a bank then have equity in the business? No. If a
No.
business
If a
borrows
business
money from a
borrows
bank,
money from a
the
bank,
bank doesn't
the
have
bank
equity,
sorry,
doesn't have equity
doesn't have equity
in the business,
in the
but
business,
it does
but
become
it
a
does become
creditor.
a creditor.
Very good. Next, repeat. Cargo,
Cargo.
consignment,
Consignment.
Very good. Okay, listen. Cargo is a noun. It means things that are being sent by ship, airplane, trains, or truck. Consignment is a noun. It means an amount of goods that are delivered. For example, I imagine the cheapest way to transport large cargo consignment is by sea. Let's practice. Which do you imagine is the cheapest way to transport large cargo consignment? By air, by rail, or by sea?
Ah,
Which do you imagine is the cheapest way to transport large cargo consignment? By air, by rail, or by sea? I imagine
I
the
imagine
cheapest way
the
to
cheapest way
transport
to
large
transport
cargo
large
consignment
cargo
is
consignment
by.
is by the sea.
Very good. Okay, next repeat. Going concern.
Going concern.
Reserves.
Reserves.
Turnaround.
Turnaround.
Very good. Okay, listen. Going concern is a company that has the financial resources to continue trading and does not expect to close down in the near future. If a company is not going concern, it has an obligation to declare the fact. For example, it isn't like you'd be able to maintain a business as a going concern if it was operating at a loss and the company had no reserves. Reserves is a noun. It is a supply of something like money that a business can use when they need to. Turnaround is a phrasal verb. It means to stop being unsuccessful and to start being successful. For example, to try to turn the business around, they could cut back on spending, perhaps by reducing overhead, payrolls, etc. Let's practice. Is it likely you'd be able to maintain a business as a going concern if it was operating at a loss and the company had no reserves? Is it likely you'd be able to maintain a business as a going concern if it was operating at a loss and the company had no reserves? No, it
No,
isn't
it
likely
isn't
to be
likely
able
to
to
be able
maintain
to
a
maintain
business
a
as a
business
going
as a
concern
going
if it
concern
was
if it
operating
was
at a
operating
loss
at a
and the
loss
company
and the
has no
company has
reserves.
no reserves.
What could you do to try to turn the business around? What could you do to try to turn the business around? To try to
To
turn
try
the
to
business
turn
around,
business
I
around,
could cut back
I
on
could cut
spending,
back on spending,
perhaps by
or
reducing
perhaps by reducing
overheads,
overheads,
payroll, etc.
payloads, etc.
Very good. Next repeat. Bearish.
Bearish,
Bullish.
bullish,
Very good. Listen. If we say that stock market is bearish, we mean that the
bearish,
general atmosphere is negative and that people
negative,
expect share prices to fall.
bearish,
The
bearish,
opposite of bearish is bullish,
bearish,
meaning that
bullish,
share prices are expected to rise.
right.
Let's practice. What happens when the atmosphere in the stock market becomes bearish? What happens when the atmosphere in the stock market becomes bearish? When the atmosphere
When the
in the stock
atmosphere
market
in the stock
becomes
market
bearish,
becomes bearish,
many investors
many
start
investors
selling
start
shares
selling
because
shares
they expect
because they expect
prices to fall.
prices to fall.
And which adjective do we use to describe the
Ah,
positive atmosphere when a lot of people are buying shares because they think prices will rise? And which adjective do we use to describe the positive atmosphere when a lot of people are buying shares because they think prices will rise? We use
we
the
use
adjective
the
bullish
adjective
to
bullish
describe the
to
positive
describe the
atmosphere
positive
when a lot of
atmosphere when
people
a lot
are
of
buying
people are
shares
buying
because they
shares
think
because they think
prices will rise.
prices will rise.
Very good. Next, repeat standardize.
Standardize,
Ta- standardize.
standardize,
Tailor
standardize,
made.
tailor-made,
Component.
component,
Specification.
specification,
Very good. Okay, listen.
specification.
Standardize is a verb. If something is standardized, it means everyone agrees to make it or do it according to a particular standards and specification, like all the same. For example, a car manufacturer might standardize its door handles, mirrors, locks, etc. This is cheaper than producing tailor-made components for each different model of cars. For example, in manufacturing, the main benefit of using standardized components in a product is that production costs are lower because tailor-made components are more expensive to produce. Tailor-made is an adjective. It means something which is designed for a particular person or group of people. For example, a tailor-made door handles of a car, a tailor-made mirrors, a tailor-made locks, so it's different from other model. Component is a noun. It means an individual quality or feature of something. Specification is a noun. It means an exact measurement or detailed plan about how something is to be made. Let's practice. In manufacturing, what's the main benefit of using standardized components in a product? In a manufacturing, what's the main benefit of using standardized components in a product? In manufacturing,
In
the main
manufacturing,
benefit
the main
of
benefit
using
of using
standardized components
standardized
in a
component
product
in a
is that
product
production
is that
costs
the production
are
costs
lower
are
because
lower
tailor-made
because the
components
pyramid
are more
components
expensive
are more
to produce.
expensive to produce.
Very good. Next, repeat state of the art.
State of the art.
Very good. Okay, listen. A state of the art product is one that uses the newest and best technology and design. Let's practice. Make a sentence with the expression state of the art. Make a sentence with the expression state of the art, please. Even the most
Even the
state
most
of the art
state of
computer
the art
technology
computer
only
technology
has a shelf
only
life
has a
of
shelf
a
life
few
of
years.
a few years.
Very good. Next, repeat price war,
Price war,
competitor,
competitor,
undercut.
undercut.
Very good. Okay, listen. Price war is a noun. It is a situation in which businesses compete to attract customers by making their prices lower. For example, in a price war, companies try to undercut their competitors in order to gain market shares. Competitor is a noun. It means a company that sells the same goods or services as another company. For example, Samsung is one of the strong competitor of Apple. Undercut is a verb. It means to sell something at a less expensive price than another company or store. Let's practice. What happens in a price war? What happens in a price war? In a price war,
In the price war,
companies try to
companies
undercut
try to
their competitors
undercut their
in
competitors
order to
in
gain
order
market
to gain
shares.
market shares.
Why do small companies usually suffer in a price war? Why do small companies usually suffer in a price war? Small companies
Small
usually
companies
suffer
usually
in a price
suffer
war
in the price
because
war
they
because
they're less able
they are less
to
able
cope with the
to
drop
cope
in
with the drop
profits
in
caused by the price
sorry.
reduction. One more. Small companies
Small companies
usually suffer
usually
in a
suffer
price war
in the price war
because they're less
because
able
they are less
to
able
cope with the
to cope
drop
with
in
the drop
profits
in profit
caused by the price
caused by the
reduction.
price
Reduction.
by with reduction
Very good. Caused by the price
caused
reduction.
by reduction caused by
Very good.
reduction.
Okay. Next,
Okay.
repeat. Commission.
Commission
Incentive.
incentive
Very good. Okay, listen. Commission is a noun. It means an extra amount of money that you earn in your job every time you sell a product or get a new customer. Incentive is a noun. It means something that makes you want to do something or to work harder because you know that you will benefit by doing this. For example, it's common for sales reps or sales representative and retail workers to receive a commission in addition to their basic wage or salary because earning commissions is an incentive for them to perform well by selling more. Let's practice. Why is it common for sales reps and retail workers to receive commission in addition to their basic wage or salary? Why is it common for sales reps and retail workers to receive commission in addition to their basic wage or salary? It's common for
it's
sales
common
reps
for sales
and
reps
retail workers
in retail
to
workers
receive a
to
commission
receive a
in
commission
addition to
in
their basic
addition to their
wage
basic
or
wage
salary
or salary
because earning
because
commissions
earning
is
commissions
an incentive
is an
for
incentive
them to
for
perform
them
well
to perform well
by selling more.
by selling more.
Very good. Next, repeat. Turn down.
Turn down.
Reference.
Reference.
Very good. Okay, listen. Turn down is a phrasal verb. It means to not accept an offer or request. For example, some people had their job application turned down as the result of poor reference from a former employer. Reference is a noun. It means a statement from someone who knows you or has worked with you that gives information about you. For example, you often need to provide a reference when you apply for a new job. Let's practice. Do you know anyone who's had a job application turned down as the result of poor reference from a former employer. Do you know anyone who's had a job application turned down as the result of a poor reference from a former employer? Yes or no?
No,
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
anyone who's
anyone
had a
who's
job
had a
application
job
turned
application
down
turned
as the
down
result
as a
of a
result
poor
of
reference
a full
from
reference
a former
from
employer.
a former employer.
Very good. Okay, so now let's move on to reading.
Okay.
Okay, so our reading is at page 41. Last headword was trend. Okay, please start at
Trend.
page 42. Headword sack,
Uh,
fire, make redundant.
uh, okay. Sack, fire, make redundant. Layoff, downsides. When somebody loses their job as a result of a company needing to downsize, do we say the person has been sacked or made redundant? When somebody loses their job as a result of a company needing to downsize, we say the person has been made redundant. So when do we usually say someone's being sacked? We usually say someone's being sacked when it's their own fault they lost their job.
Very good.
What's another verb we can use instead of sack? Another verb we can use instead of sack is fire. Give me an example, please. They fired her for being late all the time. And what's another expression we can use instead of make somebody redundant? Another expression we can use instead of make somebody redundant is lay somebody off. Give me an example, please. During the recession, we had to lay off a lot of staff.
Mhm.
Okay. Investor, investment, return, ethical. Would you ever approach a close personal friend to invest in a business idea you had? No, I wouldn't. Never. No, I would never approach a close personal friend to invest in a business idea I had. Is it more common these days for investors to consider the ethical aspects of an investment in addition to simply the annual return they can expect to get from it? Yes, it's more common these days for investors to consider the ethical aspects of an investment in addition to simply the annual return they can expect to get from it. Stock surplus storage obsolete. Why might a company decide to throw surplus stock away rather than keep it in storage and wait for demand to increase? A company might decide to throw surplus stocks away rather than keep it in storage and wait for demand to increase because the stock has reached the end of its shelf life. The charges for warehouse storage are too high. The stock is now obsolete now,
Etc.
etc.
Very good.
CC carbon copy, BCC blind carbon copy, field copy somebody in or on. When composing an email, when do we put an address in the CC field? When composing an email, we put an address in the CC field in, i-
In order,
in order to copy somebody in on that email. Eh, If you wanted to copy a colleague in on an email to a client without the client knowing anyone else had been copied in, where would you put your colleague's email address? If I wanted to copy a colleague in on an email to a client
the client.
without the client knowing anyone else had been copied in, I I'd put my colleague's email address in the BCC field. What do the abbreviations CC and BCC stand for? The abbreviations CC and BCC stand for carbon copy and blind carbon copy. Multinational,
Multi.
multinational company. What do we mean by a multinational company? By a multinational company, we mean a business that has significant operations based in several different countries.
Very good.